Hey, Nicole Roberts Jones here, and welcome to part 4 in this series called God Wants You to Be Wealthy. I'm excited to share with you, so grab a pen. Now, listen, those of you that are new to my podcast, I want you to know that anytime I do a series, those of you that have been here for a while, you know what I'm going to say. The way I teach, one part builds on the next. So you need all 4 parts. So let me do a quick review. And I'm doing this because I want you to know today, yes, is the good stuff. I think last part 3 and this one really is a culmination of you understanding how to position yourself. And that's really what our conversation today is rich and righteous positioning. But before I get into that, let's do a quick review. So here we go. Part 1, letting go of making money guilt. And really, in that episode, I talked about the fact that so many successful women feel guilty for being ambitious, for making money, when that's the way that God created you. He wired you for success. And that success has money tied to it. Listen, if God is our ultimate heavenly father, just like my earthly father, and those of you that don't know your dad, mother, grandma, whoever wanted you to be successful, my father positioned me, put me in the best schools. I went through all the things so that I could be successful. Successful means that I'm able to live a abundant life. So you feeling guilty about it? Is the enemy trying to steal, kill, and destroy? So if you missed that episode, go back and watch it as I walked you through the 3 ways to embrace your financial success. Okay. Then part 2 was challenging money stigmas. Part of the reason why you feel guilty is because there's stigmas that were ingrained in us about making money. And so we dove into some of them. But even in part 3, I went into it even deeper, which is your money base, because it's all about that base. Y'all remember that song, that base, the base? I'm not going to try to sing because I can't sing. So in part 2, I walked you through 3 steps to employ your money God's way. And then in part 3, I walked you through the 3 steps to define or redefine your wealth base. Because listen, if your wealth base is off, you could have the corner office, you could have the 6-figure salary, you could have all the things, and yet not really be obtaining the abundantly above all God ordained for you as his child. Listen, I'm a child of the king. I always say I'm God's favorite. So if I'm his favorite or you're his favorite, we can argue about that. Then if that's the case, why would he not want his favorite to do well? I talked about the prodigal son in one of these episodes. So again, if you missed any part 1, 2, or 3, go back and watch it. As we dig in today to, I said this a few minutes ago, rich and righteous positioning. Now, before I get into this, let's talk about what does righteous mean. And I think I said this in part 1, may have been part 2. Righteous is a person morally right or justifiable, virtuous. So anytime, listen, when I was little and I did good, I always got a reward. If I got straight A's, I got a reward. And when I got in college, I got a reward. I can keep going. So when you're doing things the way God intended for you, his gift back to you is wealth. I talked about this in episode 1. That's why I call the Bible God's Wealth Hall of Fame. And I walked you through some examples of wealthy folks. I'm going to give another example in this one. But in order for you to understand how to position yourself as rich and righteous, I'm going to use my favorite sport, which is basketball, right? I'm really going to use the 4-quarter strategy for rich and righteous. And by the way, there's a reason why basketball has 4 quarters. Have you realized that? Do you realize that basketball didn't start by having 4 quarters? Mm-mm. See, basketball, when it was originally invented back in 1891, those of you that are not here with me on YouTube, nrjnetwork.com, because I am showing slides. I'm not reading every single thing on the slide. And the reason I have slides is because I don't want you to miss anything of what I'm teaching you. Okay. So Dr. James Naismith, and I'm probably messing up his last name, in 1891 invented basketball. It originally consisted of 2 halves instead of 4 quarters, but they made changes early in the 20th century. So I'm going to walk you through the advantages of having 4 quarters in basketball. And really, these same advantages are what's going to help you understanding how to position yourself to obtain the wealth so that you can get in God's Wealth Hall of Fame. Come on, somebody. I know I'm working on it. So I'm going to use, now you guys know I'm always going to bring in some Bible. Story of Hannah. Now I'm going to read around it. So I'm going to encourage you when this podcast is over to read the entire story. I'm going to read pieces of it. I'm probably not going to read it all in order, but Hannah teaches us some great things about positioning ourselves the right way to obtain all that we desire. First Samuel chapter 1 verses 2 through 20 is the story this is based off of. Okay, so let me give you the cliff note story of Hannah. So Hannah, number one, married a wealthy man. His name is Elkanah. Okay, so imagine if Hannah married a wealthy man, that she lived this extravagant lifestyle. She had everything she ever wanted. hmm So on the outside, she had it all except the one thing that she really wanted, which was a child. And because she had not had a child, oh, by the way, Hannah was one of Elkanah's wives. Elkanah's other wife teased her and provoked her for not being able to have children. And this other wife kept having child after child after child. And Hannah was like, yo, I just want one. And she couldn't have it. But she didn't give up. She stayed focused and persevered to see her desire come into fruition. So we're going to use Hannah's story again. I'm going to dig into it deeper. And again, I'm going to use Hannah's story and play off of the four quarters advantage that the advantage that four quarters gave basketball. Okay, and I'm going to make it relate. Y'all with me? You ready? Got your pen? I'm going to go all in. Okay. So the first thing that the four quarters, again, this is about you positioning yourself for rich and righteous positioning, I should say. Okay. So the first thing that this shift in basketball did was it gave teams opportunity to have strategy and tactics. See, now teams had the opportunity to analyze their opponents and adapt their strategies accordingly. So as I'm recording this episode, we're right in the middle of the finals in basketball, NBA finals. And in between each quarter, what happens, y'all? The team stops and analyzes what's going on. The coach can study the strengths and weaknesses of the opposing team during the breaks and make necessary adjustments to their game plan, to their playbook, to the plays they're making. And you're gonna see in a minute that Hannah did this. But before I go into Hannah, here's what you have to know here. If you're going to implement this to position yourself for, listen, that rich and righteous positioning, because you don't want one over the other, it's both. Remember, I talked about this, I think it was in episode 2. Listen, you need to understand that God is our source. Money is just a resource. So if you can position yourself to use money the right way, you got to choose to either attain or remain. I know you're like, what does that mean? Attain or remain? See, remain means that you can stay right where you are. You guys hear me say this all the time. Listen, if you're going to remain, then you can hang up. Don't ever listen to any of my podcasts because listen, I'm never focused on the current version of myself. As I'm recording this is 2025. 2025 is done. The version of me in 2025 is done. I'm like, what's this hair doing, y'all? The version of me in 2025 is done. I'm working on the 2035 version of me. So I'm not remaining. I'm choosing to attain. So remain would be settling. It would be sitting in good enough. That's that poverty mentality. That's that struggle mentality. That's that settle mentality. When God always wants you to go after and attain, right? So listen, remain or attain means to achieve or accomplish, to reach by efforts. See, life is meant to be lived on levels, right? Those of you that have been with me for a while, you've heard me talk about your purpose matriculates, just like you matriculate through the education system. So you don't just stay in kindergarten the whole time you're in the education system. You don't just stay in elementary school. You don't stay in junior high. You don't stay in high school. You matriculate level by level. So even in your career, it's about you matriculating. It's about when you get good at the place you're in, how do you grow yourself? Is it going back to school? Is it going after another job? What does that look like for you? What's that role, that thing you want to do in your career you greatly desire that you don't dare talk about it, don't dare go after it? Can I tell you, if there's a desire in your heart, then God placed it there. You've got to be willing to either attain or remain. See, remain means to stay in the place that one has already been occupying, right? So it's me going into kindergarten or going into high school with the kindergarten mentality. Bible verse here, Proverbs 21:5. The plans of the diligent lead surely to plenty, but those of everyone who is hasty surely to poverty. A great example of the difference between attaining and remaining is Venus and Serena. Now, y'all know their story. If you don't, I'm like, where you been the last 20 years, right? See, they set a goal. They set a goal and did the work to attain it. Even, dare I say, their father, when they had he had gotten them as far as he could take them, he went and found another coach that could take them to the next level. If you haven't seen the movie, go see it because it's actually really good, right? So they unapologetically activated their gifts and talents and continued to grow. So to attain it, you got to stop settling for where you are. I said this a minute ago. To attain the abundantly above all that God ordained for you to get into your rich and righteous position, you've got to stop settling. Bible verse here, Philippians 3:13 and 14. Brethren, I do not count myself to have apprehended, but one thing I do, forgetting those things which are behind and reaching forward to those things which are ahead, I press toward the goal for the prize of the upper call of God in Christ Jesus. Now, let me just go over two things here. I do not count myself to have apprehended, meaning I'm not done yet. I'm not finished. I have so much more to do. Forgetting those things which are behind, like yesterday is over. Reaching forward to those things which are ahead, which is tomorrow. So what's your goal tomorrow? Your bio, your resume, that's done. That's yesterday. What's the version of you that has not come forth yet? Saying this to you in the middle of my own transition into moving what's next. Actually, this podcast is even part of my transition into growing and expanding my territory that God pushed me into, if I'm going to be honest. But anyway, I talked about that on another episode. So listen, and got to be willing to do what it takes to continue to attain, continue to grow, continue to listen. Go after a version of you that you have not become yet. God is always looking to see how will you grow that gift inside of you. And you could be successful and still have more growing to do. Mhm. So that's step one. That's strategy and tactics, right? So step two, when we're looking at how the four-quarter strategy really teaches us, four quarters of basketball, really teaches us how to position our own rich and righteousness. Number two is commercial placement. See, the four quarters in basketball allows broadcasters to seamlessly integrate advertisements and generate revenue. So I know you're thinking, okay, what does commercial placement have to do with me? Well, I wonder if you realize that you are a brand. So my question to you is, how are you positioning your purpose in the marketplace or leaving room for it? Meaning that, listen, if you're copying somebody else, you're doing what other people are doing, you're not being the version of you that God created you to be. Listen, if you're copying, if you're a second-rate version of somebody else, then one of us isn't necessary. Why did God need two of the same exact person? Not talking about twins. I'm talking about you copying somebody else because that part, that position is already completed. What's the job that you need to do the way that only you can do it? What's the answer that's happening in your marketplace that you are not stepping into? And how do people see you as that answer? When I think of that, it's making me think of Cynthia Marshall. And I don't have my notes here, and I've been studying because I'm writing my next book, y'all. So Cynthia Marshall. Now, many of you might know her as the CEO of Dallas Mavericks. Now, but years before that, Cynthia was I can't think of her title. She was in the C-suite at AT&T. I think it was vice president of either HR, diversity, inclusion, or it could have been both. I can't remember. And when she retired, now, mind you, Cynthia rose through the ranks of AT&T and did great. And at some point thought, okay, I'm done. Again, attaining, not remaining. She decided she was going to open up her own consultancy. And so when she did that, she received a phone call. Now, listen, she got a phone call from the owner of the Dallas Mavericks, Mark Cuban. Do you know why she got that phone call? Because her brand spoke for itself. What does your brand say about you that when you're not in the room speaks volumes to who you be? You never know what opportunities come because of the brand called you. You never know who's watching you. You never know what partnerships will come. I keep going on and on. But the point is this, I need you to understand that you are a brand. Now, to bring a little Hannah in here. So in Hannah's story, now Eli the priest was sitting on the seat. This is, by the way, 1 Samuel 1:9-11 is what I'm reading. Now, Eli the priest was sitting on the seat by the doorpost of the tabernacle of the Lord. And she was in bitterness of soul and prayed to the Lord and wept in anguish. Why am I reading that to you now? See, Eli the priest saw Hannah. He saw how badly she wanted whatever she was praying for. Again, you are a brand. People are watching you. And it was because she did that piece, y'all. Listen, let me read this whole section to you. Okay. So I'm going to read 8 through 11 because I think I need to read this section too. Okay. Then Elkanah, her husband, said to her, Hannah, why do you weep? Why do you not eat? And why is your heart grieved? Now, mind you, she wouldn't do any of that to get her husband's attention. Am I not better to you than 10 sons? Like, why are you so sad, girl? I'm good to you. So Hannah arose after they had finished eating and drinking. And now Eli the priest was sitting on the seat by the doorpost. That's what I just read for you. So I want you to get this, that not only did her husband see that she was sad and she was really, really fasting and praying and going after God for something, now the priest sees it too. Her brand was speaking for her. Y'all get that? It's the same as here. This is Matthew 7:16 to 20. You will know them by their fruits. I remember my grandma used to say to me all the time, you will know them by the fruit they bear. Imagine a tree. If a tree has rotten fruit, are you eating the rest of any kind of tree off that, any kind of fruit off that tree? I know I'm not. So what Hannah was doing is who she was already being was someone that produced fruit, and it made Eli look, it made her husband look. I'm sure the other wife was watching her too, right? Now, so the whole Bible verse is Matthew 7:16 to 20. I'm gonna read it quickly. You will know them by their fruit. Do men gather grapes from thorn bushes or figs from thistles? Even so, every good tree bears good fruit, but a bad tree bears bad fruit. A good tree cannot bear bad fruit, nor can a bad tree bear good fruit. Every tree that does not bear good fruit is cut down and thrown into the fire. Therefore, by their fruits you will know them. See, by Hannah's fruit, that her brand was established. What's your brand? How do people see you? How do you show up in your marketplace? That does have to do with your rich and righteous positioning because God is looking at that too. The fourth strategy here is fan engagement. So, by providing breaks, it also provided an opportunity for halftime entertainment, such as performances, cheerleaders, all the things that enhance the overall fan experience. So, I know you're saying, okay, what's that got to do with me? So, listen, the reason I added in commercials was one, brand engagement, but second, to keep the fans engaged. So this is needed to position yourself to obtain it. Again, I want you to get using Hannah as an example. She was positioning herself. She didn't care about what she was looking like. She was doing whatever it took, y'all, to get to this child. She was barren. She and her husband had been trying for years and she couldn't have a baby. She did not give up on that. She kept positioning herself, and her positioning was with God. Come on, somebody. She never gave up. I said this a few minutes ago. Elkanah, her husband, said to her, this is 1:8. Hannah, why do you weep? Why do you not eat? And why is your heart grieved? Am I not better to you than 10 sons? See, I want you to get this. 1 Corinthians 9:24 says this. Do you not know that those who run in a race all run, but one receives the prize? So you must run in such a way that you may obtain it. See, Hannah ran in such a way, she was not giving up on her dream. She stayed in there. I mean, literally fasting and praying like, Lord, you're going to see how it ended. But I want you to understand that if you're going to go after this, and even the fan engagement piece, you're engaging all the people around you. Another example of this is Esther. I can't remember what podcast episode, but Esther's my favorite girl. So I end up talking about her in just about every podcast episode, really, because I feel like my life is for such a time as this. But that's another conversation, another time. But here's the thing with Esther. When she came to her for such a time as this moment, what did she do? She asked all of her people to pray with her. So you've got to understand fan engagement makes the difference. It really does. Engaging all those around you. And it also speaks to your brand, y'all. Okay. So then, part 4. Fatigue management. By dividing the game into 4 quarters, players have a chance to rest and recover during the breaks. And now some of y'all are saying, okay, so what does this have to do with me? So here's what you got to know. To implement this, you need tools to maintain and sustain. Again, forgetting those things which are behind, reaching forward to those things which are ahead. I press. So you've got to maintain and sustain. You don't give up. You don't let go. You don't quit. And that's exactly what Hannah did. Maintain means to keep in an existing state, persevere from failure or decline. Sustain is slightly different. It refers to supporting or keeping something going over a long period. Okay. So you got to do both. It's not one or the other. So going back to Hannah, okay. Now here we are at verse number 12 now. Again, this is 1 Samuel chapter 1. Now I'm at verse 12. I'm reading around it. And it happened as she continued praying before the Lord. Verse 15 says, she poured out my soul before the Lord. I'm showing you that she prayed and prayed and prayed and prayed and prayed. She kept sowing and sowing and sowing and sowing. She didn't give up. Another great example of this is the parable of the talents. And I think I said this in another podcast episode. I'm going to give you the Cliff Note version. Matthew 25:14-30. Again, a boss had 3 employees, the servants in the Bible, but I say employees because I don't like servants, right? And he doled out riches. He said, I'm going to give you a little bit, employee number 1. I'm going to give you a little bit, employee number 2. I'm going to give you a little bit, employee number 3. Employee number 1 invested while he was gone and got back threefold. Employee number 2 invested, got twofold. Employee number 3 dug a hole in the ground and put it in there. He did nothing with it. So the question here becomes, what are you doing with what God has given you? And here's the result for these servants. This is now, I'm reading Matthew 25. I'm only going to read verses 25-30. Okay, the whole story again is Matthew 25:14-30. I'm only reading verses 25-30. Now, this is when the Lord comes back, the boss comes back and said to him, you wicked and lazy servant. Talk to the one that did nothing. You wicked and lazy servant, you knew that I reap where I have not sown and gather where I have not scattered seed. So you ought to have deposited my money with the bankers, and at my coming, I would have received back my own with interest. So take the talents from him and give it to him who has 10 talents. For to everyone who has more will be given, and he will have abundance. But from him who does not have, even what he has will be taken away. And cast the unprofitable servant into the outer darkness. Mhm. So you see, listen, the whole goal is you've got to do whatever it takes. Even dare I say, I'm on this health journey, y'all. You hear me talk about this a lot. And in menopause, what worked when I was in my 20s, what worked was in my 30s, even dare I say what worked in my 40s no longer works if I'm going to maintain and sustain. I had to learn to do some new and different things and eat some new and different ways. What are you doing to go after the next version of you? See, ultimately, I said this a minute ago, God is looking at what you are doing with what you have. Are you settling or are you going after what's next for you? Mhm. So that was the 4 quarters. You got strategies and tactics, uh, fan engagement, commercial placement, fatigue management. You need all 4 of these to position yourself. Now, I know you're saying to yourself, okay, Nicole, what happened to Hannah? What happened to Hannah, right? And let me say this verse, 2 Chronicles 15:7. But you, be strong and do not let your hands be weak, for your work shall be rewarded. So here's Hannah's reward. Because God is always going to bless you for everything you do that's over and above. That's why I believe that Bible verse says, I will do abundantly above all you ask or think, especially when you go abundantly above all, God is going to double, triple that. So here's where Hannah ended. Okay. So we're now at verse 17. Eli, this is the priest, said to her, now this is after he's seen her crying, go in peace, and the God of Israel grant your petition which you have asked of him. In other words, girl, I've been watching you cry and cry and cry, and I'm asking God to go ahead and give you what you want. Okay. So we go to verse 20 that says this. So it came to pass in the process of time that Hannah conceived and bore a son and called his name Samuel, saying, because I have asked for him from the Lord. The thing that's so deep, y'all, about her birthing Samuel. Do you know who Samuel is? Listen, Implementing these four strategies moves you into your ability to gain and obtain the abundantly above all tied to your purpose. Plus, is how you use your wealth to gain for God. So here's what Hannah says back, or this is what happened. This is this is about her son. Okay, this is about Hannah's son. How Hannah's story ended. First Samuel chapter 3 now, 19 through 20. The Lord was with Samuel as he grew up, and he let none of Samuel's words fall to the ground. And all Israel from Dan to Bathsheba recognized that Samuel was attested as a prophet of the Lord. Now, again, remember, Hannah said, I'm going to give my son to you, Lord. And now we're looking at Samuel grown up. See, what you don't realize is that Hannah birthed Samuel, right? The prophet who would eventually anoint David to be king. That's who Samuel is. See, Hannah thought that she was praying for a baby, but what she didn't realize is she was in line to bring a king forth. She was praying for a baby, and instead, what she did was she brought a king forth. And I wonder if you really realize how your wealth, excuse me, worth too, is tied to something greater. It's not just about material things. It's not just about all the things you can buy. But when you make more money, you make more impact. When you make more money, you have more influence. When you have wealth, there are things that you can do and be that you can't do when you're in struggle. So the goal always is that you position to obtain the abundantly above all so that you gain for God. So here's my question to you as we end this part 4 series. How is your wealth an instrument to something greater than material gain? How is your wealth an instrument to something greater than material gain? I talk about myself. It allows me to give to causes I greatly care about. It allows me to send my niece now, because she's the only one in college at the moment, gifts in college when she needs it. It allows me to do so many things beyond just against pay my mortgage, yes, have the car that I've always wanted, because I do. But I didn't work to get that. Even if I tell you this last quick story, I remember when this is when I was still living in Boston, and I wanted to turn my car in to get an SUV, because if you guys know Boston, it snows in Boston. And this is a real story. And so we go to, I say to myself, I'm going to get a Mazda CX-7. This is when they first came out. I'm in the Mazda dealership, and the man says, I feel like you should be next door. I look at him as a BMW dealership next door. Who does that? I'm in a Mazda dealership, and he's telling me I should go over to the BMW dealership. So to make a long story short, I go over to the BMW dealership. Same monthly payment, by the way, but I wouldn't get it. I told my husband, I can't get that. I started feeling guilty when God was positioning to bless me. Who goes to one dealership? And by the way, they were not owned by the same people, two totally different dealerships. My husband said, do you not realize that God is trying to bless you and you're blocking his blessing? So yeah, I got that BMW. But the reason I'm sharing that with you is because I had worked so hard all the years of growing my calling and doing all the things that I knew I needed to do to attain it, that God positioned me to be blessed. So, in what ways are you holding up your blessing? In what ways are you holding up somebody's answered prayer? In what ways are you really positioning yourself to live both rich and righteous so that you're gaining for God? I look forward to hearing from you how this series has blessed you, how it has shifted some of the way you're looking at your money, some of the way that you're building wealth. And I always ask, please share it. I ask you to share it because, again, you never know who in your tribe, who in your family, who of the people that follow you on social media need this insight. So whether you share here, if you're in YouTube, you can hit the share button underneath me and share it and text it to your people. Or go over to my Instagram page and find the post about this episode or part 1 or 2 or whatever it is and share it. Or you can just share meaningfulworkpodcast.com. Either way you do, you not only, it's not for me about growing my reach, even though that helps too, but really my goal is growing my calling, that I'm attaining, that I am always doing the thing I need to do to live as the highest and best version of who God created me to be, as I'm holding the same for you. All right. So thank you for joining me for this series, for this episode. By the way, if you ever feel like there are episodes or questions you have and you want to hear me talk about it or train about it or have guests around it, because listen, if I don't know it, I'll bring somebody that does. Send us an email. Email us at info@NicoleRobertsJones.com and just write in subject podcast episode and tell us the questions you have or insight you'd love for us to talk about around meaningful work. All right. So with that, that's it for this episode. Again, thank you for joining us for this special 4-part series. I look forward to seeing you in our next episode. Bye, y'all.